do you have an explanation for the blockchain that makes sense to anybody at all? Like when you're like telling people, you know, at breakfast on Sunday that you do blockchain things, then what do you say?
Yes, I do have such an explanation.
My sentence is definitely way too long for this forum.
Yeah. Mine's like a paragraph, but if I tried to summarize it, I guess it would be a public ledger that's secured by cryptography and visible to everyone. And, oh, that's a really long run-on sentence.
It was at least one sentence, which is better than they did.
Yep. And it's also stored in many places, so it's hard to tamper with. Yep.
Bernd, anything to add? Okay. Is anybody actually using the blockchain to do anything besides speculate on getting rich on the blockchain? It's an honest question, right? Like, I haven't bought anything. One time we bought some hardware wallets with blockchain to store our blockchain currency on. But legit, like, you know, there's the famous pizza story guy. So I think this is actually interesting to Bernd. I think he pays attention to this. But for all of you, is the blockchain in action yet? Are we seeing this in real life?
Well, I think we are, and just starting to right now, because the really interesting stuff is the real work. Everything else, the speculation on top of that, I'm sure we'll get into here and with the debate later. But I'd like to tell people that I only watch one statistic. I only watch one number as it changes over time and has nothing to do with the value of Bitcoin or any crypto device. I'm interested in the adoption of cryptocurrencies to buy real goods and services. And that's the only number that matters. That is actually growing very slowly, but has grown absolutely continuously since the start of this all in about 2009. Hasn't seen any crazy ups or any crazy downs. It's just growing steadily over time. And I think that's the real measure of what's going on. Because what good is a store of value if you can't use it to buy anything valuable? So I think that is starting to happen. I think will happen more. The bulk of the good stuff will probably happen after the crypto apocalypse that is bound to hit us at some point in time. Just drop that bomb and pass the mic.
So my take on this is that companies like Civic are doing a great job of building prototypes right now to solve real-world problems. So we build an app that allows you to own your own identity. And we allow you to store it on the blockchain, and you own your identity. The problem right now is we all know about data breaches like the Equifax one that happened recently. And your data gets exposed, and nobody wants that. Like, it leads to all sorts of terrible things. So you want people to have a digital identity and to keep it for yourself. So what the product does is it allows you to verify your identity on an app, and you can reuse this anywhere you like. It's not stored on a server somewhere where it's hackable. It is stored on the blockchain. We only store the hashes of the data, and that's it. There you go. That's a real-world problem that's solved right there.
Cool. I agree with Bernd. Most of the usage right now is in actually making payments with the different crypto assets. Companies are starting to adopt that more. So I think Overstock just recently said that they're going to accept cryptocurrencies as payment on their platform. But other than that, I would say it's primarily speculation on the expectation that the future utility value of these tokens will increase with time.
Okay, this is maybe an obvious question for some of you, but we're being, open to everybody. What is the difference between a token and an altcoin? Is there a technical difference? I actually think I have an answer, but I'm curious if we can all agree or not.
You sent us an answer in the email to set us up for this. I disagree with your answer.
Okay, well, it's a good start.
There's something that is supposed to be the difference, and then there's the reality, and the reality is that everyone uses all these words interchangeably, and so you have to be careful about what's underlying. But fundamentally, a coin implies a store of value, where that value can be used for a whole myriad of different of different purchases, or it has utility in a variety of different areas. The point of a token is it's supposed to do one thing or a small set of things very, very well. It's supposed to provide access to something in particular, like a transit token. Any old Torontonians here? Remember those little tokens? No different from that. So that's the definition that I use. Token is supposed to have utility. Ask me about that later. And a coin is supposed to be something that you can use to purchase or exchange value in a wide variety of different ways. That's my definition.
I agree with a lot of what you just said. However, altcoin, by definition, is just any coin that is traded that is not Bitcoin. So therefore, there's some confusion there because people don't really understand what a token is. So in order to just differentiate Bitcoin from everything else, I think the term altcoin has become widely used.
So you're a maximalist?
Correct.
Does anyone want to explain what maximalist is?
Not really.
We'll get to that in the debate.
I agree as well in some of the points that were brought up. And the way I understand it is the coins are base currencies for these different protocols. So things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin that have their own blockchain, I would consider a coin. And then the token would be something that would be built on top of Ethereum and meant to act as that alternative to Ethereum on the platform to increase speed and reduce costs for those dApps that are running on there.
Do we have any tokens or altcoins that most people in the room haven't heard about that we want to highlight? If you got to shout out one, not because you own it or because you're involved with it or whatever, but is there anything like kind of cool and interesting that's happening that nobody knows about? I got one I could talk about, but this isn't my panel, it's your panel, so I'll let you guys do this.
I'll start. Sure. So I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening in the supply chain specifically. So there's coins like Modem and Walton Chain, which are using different things like Internet of Things devices or RFID devices to be able to track a shipment from where it was picked up to where it was delivered to increase efficiency. And Modem specifically is focusing on pharmaceuticals. So there's a big issue in the EU where they need to be able to track the temperature of the shipment the entire way through, and if it goes below a certain temperature, then the medicine's no longer good. So their Internet of Things devices are actually monitoring that temperature the entire way through the process. So I think those are kind of interesting examples.
So the altcoins that really interest me are the ones with real-world application. I know there was just a token sale not long ago for doc.ai. This is, it's all about medical records, and it is a blockchain that stores your information as it pertains to medical records on the blockchain. I would obviously say Civic because it is an identity store in the blockchain. Any other ones? There's so many altcoins out there right now, and you really need to be careful and do your research. Because even if they have a really nice white paper and it looks like a legit company, really, really do your research before you buy anything.
I'm going to be disappointing to Mac and point out that there's one altcoin that really, really matters, and I'll tell you why. That altcoin is Ethereum. And it matters because one of the things when you tokenize, when you decide to issue a token, one of the things that's implicit in that is that you're decentralizing the space that your application operates in. It's implicit in that. If you don't want to decentralize, you don't need a token. There's other ways that you can provide that functionality. And I'm going to guess, I'll throw out a number and say 90% of the companies out there that are tokenizing their applications do not fully understand the implications of decentralizing what they're doing. The one world that fully understands what that means is the Ethereum world itself. Ethereum was specifically designed and conceived of and built to support decentralization. And if you're interested in something that I think has a very long life, I think that's the place to look. And that's not to say that there aren't a lot of technical and philosophical and energy use and all kinds of other problems in the Ethereum space, but there are some amazing things happening, and I think that that's where I see real utility in the future. where decentralized applications can live and run.
So remember that we have panelists from 3 different walks of life here. We have a day trader in altcoins finding all sorts of crazy, weird, fun new things. We have somebody who led one of the most respectable ICOs in the history of the human species. And we have a guy who builds companies but is far from a speculator. So my question to all of you now is, let's pretend that one of the people who didn't put their hand up when I said, do you own cryptocurrency? Right? Somebody's here with their girlfriend, and their girlfriend loves this stuff, and he's the boyfriend, and he's new. He doesn't really know what's going on. But he finishes listening to this panel, and then he watches this debate, and he's like, holy fuck, I just saw the future. And he knows it. He's like, he's serious now. He's about blockchain all the things. He's going to blockchain his fruit. Where and how do you recommend that he get started? If somebody is mentally in with this and thinks that it's a big part of the future and they want to be involved, how do they do that? What's the reasonable way to make money in blockchain stuff in 2017?
I will start.
Oh, sure. So, for day trading specifically, if you're inspired and you walk out of here, I would say start small. Go out and buy a Bitcoin, or even a fraction of a Bitcoin. And then from there you go, well, maybe I should open a Bittrex account, like put your toe in the water. And then you take 10% of your holdings that you have in Bitcoin and you invest that in some coin that you pick. You can base this off of the last 24 hours of performance or maybe something you heard in the news. But be conservative. Don't go crazy. Because here is fair warning. One day it'll be up by 300%, and the next day it will be down by 600%. It is extremely volatile. We've seen crazy fluctuations. So start small, and then when you're comfortable, invest more.
We live, all of us, in a world that I like to call a chronocracy. This world of the blockchain technology. And it's a chronocracy because it takes time to learn about this stuff. So it is a world that rewards knowledge, and knowledge comes with time and experience and doing a lot of reading and a lot of direct experience yourself and so on. And I think if the message I heard was take it easy and go slowly and make sure that you've learned before you move on to the next step, that's definitely true. There are some resources available. If you go to meetup.com and put in Vancouver Bitcoin, up will come the Vancouver Bitcoin Meetup. They do wonderful introductions where they teach you at various levels what you need to know. A little bit about how the technology works and how a wallet works and so on. A little bit how to conduct yourself and so on. But the one thing, if you're going to trade, and since I'm not the trader here, I can say this, be very, very careful. It is a dirty, dirty business. The trading world right now is like the late 1920s in the American equities markets, and the reckoning is coming. Many of the same scams that went on in the equities markets at that time that were later regulated out are going on right now. And there are people that always have a huge advantage over you. Some of those people actually are and work for the exchanges. So be very careful who you sign up for. Be careful who you buy your crypto from. Be careful where you keep your crypto. It's not in an exchange, is it? You bought yourself a hardware wallet, or you keep it on a well-secured laptop, don't you? Yes, nod your heads.
Please do.
Be very, very careful. It is possible to create the worst of the current financial world and the worst of the crypto financial world if you set up your affairs incorrectly and wrong, both at a technical level and at a judgment and decision-making level. So be careful, buyer beware.
Cool. I'd also add that the one thing I first did was really try and get a handle on what the technology is and what's important about it and what features it offers. So I'd recommend reading things like the Bitcoin white paper, the Ethereum white paper. There's a lot of really great podcasts out there as well that you can listen to, which give you a lot of information there, like Unchained by Laura Shin. And then once you're ready to trade, I would just recommend exactly what everyone else mentioned. Be very careful. Only invest what you're willing to lose. It's an extremely volatile and emotionally driven market. And it's open 24/7. So you'll see fluctuations with the morning when North America wakes up and in the evening when Asia wakes up. So it doesn't stop, and you just need to try and stay rational and stick to your goals, and don't let the emotions take over your actions in those situations.
Okay, we're going to do one last question for the panel, and that is you can choose, you can do all three or you can choose, but your 1, 5, and 10-year timeline on blockchain technology in the world. Hey, let's not say do all three. Choose one of those. Whether you're choosing 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, whether you're saying nothing's going to change or like it's all fucking different, whatever it is, 1, 5, or 10 year, tell us about the future of the blockchain world. No, tell us about the future of the real world with some blockchain going on.
So I would start off with saying, dependent on what happens with the hard fork in November, depending on how that plays out, we will probably see a dip and a recovery for Bitcoin. And then if we move into the 1 year phase, with just the amount of press that Bitcoin and blockchain is getting right now, and just the random conversations I'm having with people, everybody wants to get in on this. And the last estimate I heard was that less than 1% of the world population currently owns a cryptocurrency. So there's a lot of room to grow. We have not reached critical mass by any means. So I would say that by the end of next year, we will probably see the same sort of slow and steady growth. Depending on what happens with world governments banning like exchanges and things like that, that will definitely affect things. But even so, we saw with China attempting to ban the exchanges, everybody shifts to a different country and it just all picks back up again. So I foresee slow, steady growth, and then somewhere we will hit an inflection point where we probably will see hockey stick adoption. But I'm an optimist. Let's pass on to the pessimist.
I'll go? Okay. I'm going to explain a little bit about what I think for 1 year and 10 year. Yeah. So in the next year or two, I think a big narrative is going to be how countries decide that they want to interact with the blockchain. You are seeing things like China banning exchanges and ICOs. You're seeing countries like Vietnam a month ago said that they wanted to introduce some regulation for Bitcoin, and then a couple days ago they said that cryptocurrencies are not going to be recognized as currencies. So you're going to see countries trying to figure out where exactly they fit into this. And also, so much of the technology is just in proof of concept right now for these different use cases. So I think you'll see more enterprise adoption in the next couple years as those use cases become more mature. And 10 years, blue sky, I think you'll see a lot more assets, real world assets on the blockchain. So things like land, digital identities. There's some really interesting conversations right now around, I think there's about 2 billion people in the world without birth certificates. So if that can be put on the blockchain, then nobody will be able to forge that, nobody will be able to steal those. It'll be all managed and immutable there. So I think that there's some really interesting things to come in the future. Dubai, I think, was also looking at doing digital passports and combining that with facial recognition scanners. So you wouldn't even need to have a paper passport when you go into the airport. You just go in and they know exactly who you are through the blockchain. So I think 10 years from now, it'll be a much different world, and it'll be a really interesting world.
I will answer the question. I'll pick 10 years as the line, but I will give you something to think about as well. There are all sorts of amazing things that you can implement using blockchain technology, just incredible things. And we've heard about some of them, like digital identity and so on and so forth. The one thing that you cannot, try as you might, implement well in blockchain is a border. It doesn't work. jurisdiction breaks down. So we all need to be thinking about what that means for the future. And I don't think any of us are pretending that we can pretend to predict it, but we can kind of look and say what has happened with other things. I look at the internet and computers. Remember the Homebrew Computer Club, where kind of Apple computers started way back when? How many of those clubs still meet today? None of them, because nobody even talks about computers. They're just kind of in our lives. They're part of everything. They're in our phones, they're in our laptops, and everywhere. And no question in my mind, 10 years from now, we won't be filling the room with panels and debates about blockchain. It's just going to be something that runs underneath almost everything that we touch that has to do with value exchange and trust. Whether we'll get to that point in 5 years, I think there'll still be some interesting changes going on. And as we know, governments and things that have to do with jurisdiction and borders take a long time to change. And they're sometimes resistant to change. Isn't that funny? But 10 years from now, I think this room is empty, or this room will be really filled with interesting people talking about something other than blockchain.
Friends, that is going to be the end of our short panel. Normally what you do at the end of a panel is you let people ask questions, but I'm not going to, because they're all staying here and there's beer right there. So we're going to, in a minute, not quite yet, we're going to applause for the panel, and then we're going to meet back in our chairs in 15 minutes for the debate. If you are a debater tonight, I need you to come up here and meet me as soon as the wild wave of applause is done. So for the panel. Thank you, all of you. You are free.